So, good morning, Nicholas Martin. It's really lovely to have you on my show, Wise Women Weekdays. Thank you very much for joining me. How are you today?
Yes, glad to say fighting fit, but not fighting. Glad to say.
Fighting fit, but not fighting. I like that. I like that very much. Nicholas, you and I don't think we've actually met before. I think our paths have definitely crossed. I receive regular emails from you, which I never get a chance to join because
Hmm.
you are, could I say member or representative or part of the group AICS?
Hmm.
AICS, Adult Health and Environmental Support.
Yes, I'm actually chairman, and it's Adult Child Health and Environmental Support. And it's set up to try and emulate or to reproduce in the UK what Robert Kennedy's CHD group in America, the very well-known group that he founded a long time ago, to educate the public as to the effects of radiation of devices which are ubiquitous and people don't know really what's going on. And
How did it come about in the first place? How did you set it up? And we'll talk about how it started and how you got
yes,
involved, and then what it is doing, which is
yes,
very admirable, and how people can help. So, can I
right.
actually also, and a little backstory, a little bit about you. How did you get involved in what you're doing?
Absolutely. I studied economics at university and then went on into business and worked for a very big packaging company called Smurfit, which is, I think, is the biggest now in the world. And then later on, I discovered that women are much more intelligent than men because my wife was running a small company and two of the other directors wanted to leave. And she wanted me to join a management buyout. And I said, no, I'm quite happy, in what I'm doing. And she went on and on and on and on. And eventually I collapsed and gave in and became a director of that company, whereupon she retired and left me holding the baby. And that's when I realized women are smart.
Very good.
And
Half
then
the
I ran
battle.
it for many, many years. But the salient point is she put Wi-Fi in our house. We already had it in our office, but she didn't go in there much. And she put it in our house. And one day she couldn't get out of bed. She was racked in pain. And I had to take her to the hospital at 1 o'clock in the morning. And they gave her morphine to dull the pain and cortisone to get her mobile. And she was in a wheelchair. And I didn't like the idea of me pushing around in a wheelchair until either she dropped dead or I dropped dead. So I then did a lot of research and came across Dr. Martin Paul, Professor Emeritus of Washington State University, who explained that Wi-Fi and microwave radiation in general interferes with the body's low voltage gated calcium channels in the walls of the cell membranes, and that causes too many calcium ions to go from the bloodstream into the cell, which generates peroxynitrites, which then go around the body and they cause oxidative stress, which is a known precursor to cancer and other bad effects like inflammation. And so the inflammation is what got to my wife. And we then removed Wi-Fi, and she's no longer in a wheelchair and she's perfectly okay. Then I realized when I draw my last breath, and the angels or whatever say, Mr. Martin, what have you done with your life? And if I didn't do anything to warn other people, I'm sure they would send me down to hell. They might send me there anyway, I don't know. That's beyond
I
my...
don't think so, Mark. I don't think at all, Nicholas. I don't think you'll be going anywhere other than up.
Oh, that's very kind.
And that's a
Anyway,
lovely way of describing it, that you're, with the angels, when you're going to be, assessed or whatever. Yes.
absolutely, yeah. So that's how I realized I had to do something. Then gradually, getting to know what Robert Kennedy has done in America, and I think he's a marvelous man, what he's done. And what he's doing now as in the American government is absolutely marvelous. And so we decided, a group of us got together to create AICS, and we formed it as a limited company. And it's been going as a limited company for about a year, just over a year. But we held a couple of events before we formed the limited company, and we had Robert Kennedy's lawyer, a chap called Scott McCulloch, and they worked together when he was in CHD to defeat the American government about microwave radiation. And we were very proud to have Scott McCulloch beamed in via Zoom on 2 of our London AIX events. And AIX is really trying to educate people how they can protect themselves, use this technology safely. And ultimately, AIX is not against technology. I mean, we're on the internet now, but I'm on a wired system. We don't have Wi-Fi in our house. And eventually, the pernicious technology will be replaced because mankind has the ability to use and develop technologies which are not harmful to other species like animals or plants and human beings. And we want to do that. And the reason why we have to do it is because there are so many lies propagated by those in authority all around the world, really. I mean, for example, the climate emergency is pushed by governments locally and nationally, yet there is a new organization in which John Falconer, who's a Nobel Prize winner, has come out and said there's no such thing as a climate emergency. It doesn't exist. And then you've got dishonesty in government. You've probably heard that Lisa Cook in the Federal Reserve Bank in America has forged her mortgage applications. And that's going on in America. So it's international. And we have, do you know about Brigade 77 in the UK? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
I do, Nicholas, but people that are watching this may not. So can you elaborate?
Yeah, certainly. Britain has been one of the world's leading intelligence agency countries. In other words, British military intelligence is very sophisticated and extremely capable. And they have a division called Brigade 77 operating in the UK, which openly says they're using social media. And strangely enough, a Telegram chat was made public between a member of Brigade 77, he admitted it, and a member of the public. And the member of the public said, "Why do you do what you do?" And he said, "I lie because I'm paid to." So you've got the British government employing people to lie to the British public. Now, that is unacceptable in a genuine democracy. And that's why AIX asked the question, do we really have a democracy in the UK? And a classic illustration of this is that probably, Karen, you and I, in fact, definitely, we can't go on to mainstream media, say the BBC News, and say this, what we're saying now, that microwave radiation, wireless cell towers, as they call in America, or telecommunications towers, or mobile phone towers, as we call them in the UK, can contribute to people getting cancer. They won't allow it because the controlling body that censors us out is Ofcom, and they're responsible for the rollout of the 5G network. So the idea that Britain is the mother of democracies is another illusion. And it's because of all these illusions that AIX wants to puncture the illusions with truth and get the truth out so people can live happily without cancer and without bad effects, really.
Which is our right, which is our absolute right. Anybody on this planet has that right of freedom and to live as long as they're not doing harm to another. Mother of democracy, I like that. When do you think it's been like that for a long time? Those in power. So how? What's happened? How come this democratic country in which we live is not what we think?
Right.
What's happened?
Well, that's a very good question, Karen. I mean, I don't think it's a new thing. It's been, in my view, it's been going on for a long, long time. And if I'll give you a classic example, I was very fond of my grandfather, who was in Austria at the rise of Hitler. And what happened is he was in the paper industry and he could see the rise of Hitler because he had to attend conferences organized by the Nazis in Austria, and he had to represent his company. He realized that if Hitler really got going, and this is in the 20s and 30s, he better come to England and escape. So he contacted a chap called Lord Portal, who was the chairman of Wigan's Tea, and said, "This bloke Hitler is a bit worrying. Would you give me a job?" And Lord Portal and his colleague, a man called Leslie Farrow, said, "We never heard of this bloke Hitler," because by then, it was in the 20s and 30s. but if you need to, we'll give you a job. And then in the paper mill in Austria, they had a grapevine, and they said that the workers said from the grapevine they knew the Gestapo were coming the next day to arrest him. And so he took a train into Germany with his wife, my grandmother and my mother and my aunt, and then a train from Germany into Holland, and then a boat from Holland to England, whereupon they all burst into tears because they got into Britain. Then he joined British military intelligence with his cousin, Sir Louis Namur, who was already in British military intelligence. And those people both of them worked tirelessly in the war effort of Britain against Hitler. And we used to, as children, tease our grandfather as a sort of James Bond bloke and said, "Spill the beans, James Bond." And he said, "No, those secrets will die with me." Those two gentlemen did not know that Britain and America were financing both Churchill and Hitler. And the people who stood at the cenotaph with the Queen didn't know. So the control over human mind has been going on for a long, long time. But I think it's been accentuated now because of the internet. You see, it's very easy to control my grandfather because he has to send a letter to Lord Barrow, wait for the reply. Now everything is instantaneous. We can go on the internet. We can see Brigade 77, what they're up to. We can see this lady in the Federal Reserve who forged her certificates. So we're very, very much more informed. So they have to control much, much more strongly to stop people realizing what's going on. But once people do realize, then the whole thing is finished. I mean, if you think of that chief executive who swiped that little boy's hat in the tennis competition, did you see that?
I didn't, unfortunately. No, what happened there?
It was I think it was in an American tennis, a bit like our Wimbledon. And you know, the players go round to the audience and sign their balls, you know, their tennis balls and their hats. And he signed his hat and passed it to a little boy. And next to him was a grown man who swiped a hat from the little boy. And this went out in the internet. And everybody thought, what a rascal that man is. And once the whole world sees it, the game is over and it's embarrassing. And another one was a couple, you probably saw that one where the chap took his mistress to the, I forgot what it was, to a Coldplay concert. Remember that one? Did you see? You did?
No.
Another CEO took his mistress to a Coldplay concert.
I do remember this. I do remember this, but please tell. Yes, please tell the audience. I do remember. It is quite funny, really.
Yeah.
And
the whole world saw him coupling his mistress, and it was beamed over the whole of the world. And then, of course, he had to resign. So that's what ACE is trying to do. It's trying to expose what's going on in our society in this particular sphere. And then hopefully these people will resign or change it. I'll give you a classic example, if two examples, if I'm okay to do that.
Please do.
Great. One is Cheltenham Borough Council. And under what happens, there was a very interesting case, a law case. And the result of the law case is the judge said that people with pacemakers and metal implants, etc., who live proximal to a telecom mast need to be specially safeguarded, or words to that effect. Cheltenham Borough Council approved a mast, telecom mast, just recently, based on a certificate supplied by a telecom-related company, saying that if the radiation from the mast is compliant with the ICNIR guidance, those guidance are 1 milliwatt per centimeter squared, people with pacemakers are perfectly okay, because there's no evidence that the radiation could disturb the pacemakers. And the ICNIR doesn't say that. ICNIR says these people, you know, with pacemakers are outside the guidance of ICNIR. And it also says interference with medical electronic devices, including cardiac pacemakers, has to, it says the actual wording, it is also essential to establish and implement rules that will prevent interference with medical devices, including cardiac pacemakers. So ICNIR has been misrepresented, it appears, and the case officer then recommended the approval of the mast. Now, this is astonishing, and we're now, as AICS, has raised a level 2 complaint about this, and we're going to write to all of the board members of Cornerstone and copy it to the chief executive of Cheltenham Borough Council, and we want to make that public so that the public can all look at Cheltenham Borough Council and see that they're approving MAST on this sort of basis. And that's really the work that AICS is doing.
It's like a blueprint, isn't it? Really, you're creating, something that we can all emulate across the whole of the UK.
Absolutely, yeah, yes, definitely. And the most remarkable thing, Karen, is that Cheltenham Borough Council tried to overturn in the appeal court the decision by the judge that people with these pacemakers need to be especially catered for, and they failed. So Cheltenham Borough Council should be more aware than any other council in the country of that ruling, since they failed to overturn it. Yet they've approved a MAST on the basis of something which appears to be quite contradictory with the ICNIRP guidance which they rely on. So that's one example. The other example, which is even more astonishing, Karen, is what Transport for London and that very popular person, Sadiq Khan. I don't know whether you've heard of Sadiq Khan.
Person, yeah. Sorry, yes, I know who you're referring to.
He's the chairman of Transport for London, and he's also the mayor of London, of course. And what they've done in London is they've set up a system in connection with the ultra-low emission zone, ULEZ. And you probably know some Blade Runners chopped down the ULEZ cameras. And
I was going to ask you actually, Nicholas,
yes.
and we come to it. What is your opinion of the Blade Runners? So maybe we can come to that afterwards, so I don't forget the question.
Right, absolutely. I mean, the result of them chopping down the equipment, and I think it was not only the Blade Runners, other people tried to do it as well, because they were very upset by the ULEZ, not by the contents of the equipment, but by the fact of ULEZ. I mean, for example, you had a hotel just outside or just inside ULEZ, and the people then had to pay an extra charge and damage their bookings, that sort of thing. So people were very, very irate about it. And these cameras, which were chopped down, were made available for analysis. The Blade Runners had no idea what the cameras were all about. They were just don't like ULEZ. In an examination of the ULEZ cameras, we find that they've got infrared laser diodes producing collimated beams of laser light. Now, Transport for London has said the diodes are LED, ordinary light-emitting diodes. But because of the takedown of these cameras, you can see the laser warnings are actually inside the cameras. So they do have laser diodes. And the unfortunate thing for Transport for London and Sadiq Khan is that the laser diodes have a product identification number reference on them, and they're Osram Black, Oslan Black laser diodes of 800 milliwatts per diode, and you've got 24 of them. So 24, and don't forget, ICNIRP is 1 milliwatt per centimeter squared. Now you've got concentrated beams, so you've got 800 milliwatts per diode, 24 of them, and assuming they're running at 1 amp, that gives 19,200 times the ICNIRP level, so-called safe level, beaming at people's eyes. And ICNIRP have a paper which says concentrated infrared light causes cataracts. So that's one aspect. And there's been a court case which AICS has supported to bring this out before the public domain in a court of law, so that this equipment can be legitimately taken down legally. In addition to that, they have in the actual ULEZ cameras, they have these very, very big fins, which means that they're cooling fins. And Transport for London say they're just ANPR cameras, automatic number plate recognition cameras, to capture people who haven't paid their ULEZ bill, for example. But ANP cameras are used by the police all over the UK, and they don't have these whacking great cooling fins. They're just small pieces cameras. And you need those cooling fins if you're going to put a lot of power through that camera, so-called camera, and you don't need that for ANPR. So all this has been unearthed in the court case. And they also say Unix, which is the manufacturer of this equipment, say they are conducting the living laboratory with Transport for London. And in that laboratory, they're doing mesoscopic surveillance. Now, I'd never heard of mesoscopic before. And through ACE, I'm learning a tremendous amount day to day about what people are getting up to. Mesoscopic means at nano, in other words, molecular level. So they are doing biometric scanning on people as they sit in their cars or stand at the traffic lights with their dogs. And nobody's told them. Nobody's told the British public that they're going to get damage to their eyes if they look at this equipment. And
Wow.
that's the sort of thing that ACE wants to bring out into the public domain.
It's absolutely mind-blowing, Nicholas, when you,
Yes.
you know, I think some of us have an awareness that they're not really healthy for you, such as the Blade Runners. Let's just go back to the Blade Runners. You're
Yes.
doing this using legal
Yes.
legal methods to stop
Yes.
it. Blade Runners are going in and chopping them down. What do you think about the Blade Runners?
Well, that's an extremely good question. You see, I'm a local councillor myself, and I strongly believe in upholding the law. And without the law, we've got a chaotic society. And I would say, and that's one of the reasons why I became a councillor, to support local democracy. And so I'm active trying to point out to local government. And for example, we had a telecom application from a telecom company to put a mast up in our area. And I wrote back and said, please, would you give me the power output of that mast? And knowing that most of these masts are way beyond IGNO guidance, they just disappeared. They didn't put the application in. So I absolutely believe in the rule of law. In relation to the Blade Runners, now they've done these things, chopping them down, I can't condone that, but I'm very grateful for the information that they have made public, because the people who installed the equipment are much more illegal, if you like, than the Blade Runners. They're breaking what the government relies on, the IGNO guidance. They've installed equipment which damages people's eyes. So in that context, one can't say that it was a terrible thing to chop down these cameras if those cameras are damaging people's eyesight and physiology, which is absolutely atrocious. But as a councillor, of course, I can't condone breaking the law. And what I see is that it's vitally important to get the facts out to the public, hold court cases to get this equipment legitimately and legally removed, and to embarrass Transport for London and Sadiq Khan, just like that chap who took his wife, his girlfriend, his mistress out, and the bloke who swiped the little boy's cat out. Yes. People should know what is going on in
it's
our
exposure, isn't it? And I think that's why I was really happy to have you chat with me to, you know, to share this knowledge, because so many people don't know what's going on. And when you refer to the people that install these towers, I don't think we're talking about the soldiers, the pawns, are we? Because, well, maybe we are. The engineers, do they know exactly what they're installing? I think it's the powers at the top that do know, and they're the ones I guess we're referring to, rather than the, you know, the foot soldiers that are going to do the work of their commanders. Or do you think these engineers that are installing the towers have an awareness of how damaging they are?
Well, Karen, you're very good on your questions.
Sorry.
And they put me right on the spot. I mean, first of all, I would say definitely the people at the top know. I mean, take, for example, my grandfather. He had no idea that Britain and America were financing Hitler. He genuinely thought he was doing the right thing. And he died on that basis, you know, thinking it was work. I think a lot of that applies to the people working in the telecom companies. They just don't know what's going on. The people at the top, and not all of them know, but some of them do know, and they will I mean, they must take the responsibility for damaging their fellow human beings.
Yeah.
As to who knows what in TfL and that's Transport for London and the GLA, we've now made them fully aware in the court case, or the appellant in the court case has made them aware of the nature of the equipment they've installed. Now, any normal, compassionate human being would say, bloody hell, we must get this down immediately. But they don't seem to be doing that. Instead, they employed a lawyer to represent them who said things to say that everything is perfectly okay. Now,
Yes.
that is unacceptable in a legally organized democratic society, and it needs to be exposed so that people are not hurt. And really, that's why we created AICS, out of care for our fellow human beings who are being led up the garden path, believing that everything is safe, when in fact it's not safe at all. And that's really why we do what we do in AICS.
I think it also shows the state of humanity. There is so much corruption, and so many people's moral compass is like gone bonkers, hasn't it? Because how they're behaving for the power and greed and whatever else it is that they're involved in, to get the money, to get the power. So they don't really care about humanity as it stands. What do you think about the local? I mean, two questions come to mind. I have so many questions. What do you think about an alternative? So here we're saying we're having these discussions about on you're located. I don't even know where you are located actually, Nicholas. I'm down in Sussex. Where are you located?
I'm in Berkshire.
You're in Berkshire.
Yes.
So we're having this conversation, and that is thankfully to the internet. So the internet has, is great. It's changed our world. What would be an alternative? Because we need these towers. Do we not need 4G, 3G, 5G, 6G, and whatever other G is? Do we not need these towers so that we can continue growing? So what is the alternative?
Again, you're spot on with your questions, Carol. I have to say that. Very, very, very intelligent, good questions. You see, I'm connected. AICS holds a bi-weekly Zoom every other Sunday, and we discuss these sort of things in relation to the telecom industry and microwave radiation, Wi-Fi, smart meters, and the rest on a regular basis and what we can do. And we've got people all around the country doing great activity with their local authorities to expose the truth. And the thing is, we are tied up, or I attend a Zoom in America, which does a similar thing. And the head of that Zoom is chairman of wired broadband. In other words, they're trying to put out a network through fiber optic cabling where the data goes through the cables. And I'm talking now on a wired system, which is perfectly safe. There's no Wi-Fi in this house. The download speeds and the upload speeds are faster than wireless radiation, and we're not against technology. Now, the curious thing is, you were talking about corruption in society. It's international. Is in America, money was set aside by the government to put out fiber optic cabling, which is very, very safe. And instead of that, the telecom companies put up these telecom masts, which is much cheaper. And that, the lady says, is scandalous. And of course, the telecom companies resist what her organization does, just like Transport for London resists us telling the truth about the nature of the equipment they've installed in London. But I think it was the Buddha. I'm not a Buddhist myself, but Buddha obviously was a very intelligent person. He said there are three things you can't hide in life. One is the sun, one is the moon, and the other is the truth. And now is a time when truth does seem to be flowering all over the place. And the internet is fertilizing the truth. And the internet can be run safely so that people don't get cancer. And Robert Kennedy Jr., as I mentioned, I've got a tremendous amount of respect for him, said that Wi-Fi causes cancer. And the interviewer asked him to retract that statement. And he said he refused to, and he stands by it. So more and more people are telling the truth. And Robert Kennedy is much, much more famous than Nicholas Martin, who's the local councillor in Wokingham in Berkshire. But all of us talking the truth has an effect on human consciousness.
Yeah.
And then gradually we can make for a better, more truthful society.
Absolutely. But if there's lots and lots of Nicholas Martins around the world, you know, it gets done. Kennedy, I think, is great what he's doing. I've also a little bit suspicious because of some of the comments he's been making recently about certain medical interventions. But I'll leave that for another day, because otherwise we'll be here all day. There's so much, you know, that we could talk about. Another question, and I love the fact that you've come up with there is an alternative. You know, I remember when the cable TV and all that came out, Sky TV, and the roads were forever being dug up. It is an inconvenience, but it's not as unsightly because these towers do not look very nice. I know some of them are hidden in forests to look like trees, but a lot of them are dumped, and I'm saying the word deliberately, dumped outside schools.
Absolutely,
Bang outside schools. What is that all about? Why are they doing that? I just don't understand that. To me, that seems really not kind at all. Do you have an answer to that? Do you know why?
Well, I mean, that's a very another one of your excellent questions. But
thank you.
You see, there shouldn't be near schools, obviously, because children are more vulnerable, because their bodies are not as developed as adults, and they're more sensitive to the radiation than we are. So it's even more silly to put it near a school. But they did one in Wokingham. Funny enough, Karen, a lot of these masts were put up on bogus certificates. What happens if Karen Dodd's telecom companies wants to stick up a mast in Sussex, you have to produce a certificate to say that it complies with ICNIRP guidance, which in itself is a travesty of truth, because ICNIRP is concerned with heating, but the real cancerous effects are non-thermal. So that's again the dishonesty of our society, which has to be exposed. But if you did that, if Karen Dodd Telecommunications wanted to stick a mast up down the road in Sussex, you would have to produce a certificate to say this mast complies with the ICNIRP guidance. And we found that masts all over the country were being approved on certificates from a company that was dissolved in 2015 and couldn't certify what they say proverbially a gnat's arse, because it didn't exist. And that was being used to approve masts as evidence why masts should be approved. That shows you the fundamental dishonesty. And why the telecom industry and why the councils allowed that to go on is an indication of they call me a conspiracy theorist, but I would say it was a conspiracy against us, human beings and school children. And that's the iniquity of it all. Why they put these masts near children next to schools is anybody's guess. Some people would say, many people would say it's to hurt humanity, to reduce the population. That's what some people say, because this radiation causes infertility as well as many other effects like cancer and the rest. And if you're making the next generation infertile, that's a good way to reduce the human population. And I tell you, you've probably heard of Bill Gates, the famous Bill Gates.
I have no idea who you're talking about.
Another
one. You keep swearing at me, Nicholas. You keep saying these words and names. Yes, I have heard of him.
Yeah, right. Well, his dad used to work with a woman called Margaret Sanger, and she used to run Planned Parenthood. And there's a marvelous quote from Margaret Sanger which says, for people in the working class, I mean, I don't accept the working class. I think we're all human beings, and most of us are working until we drop dead. So we're all working class. But anyway, she said, the best thing you can do for a family in the working class is to let them know that they should kill their latest born baby. Now, there are these lunatics who believe that there are too many of us and they should reduce the human population. And they speak openly about it. There was a chap who wrote a book called John co-wrote a book called Limits to Growth. I've forgotten his name, but he said he wants the human population in the world to be reduced to about 1 billion, and we're about 7 or 8 billion. And you've got,
Well, yeah, there was the Georgia Guidestones that got
yes,
taken down in the last few years. That said something like that as well. I thought it was 500 million. And
yes,
I believe one of England's iconic presenters, Sir David Attenborough, I think those words have come out of his mouth as well. There's too many people. So you think, is there? Is there? Do we actually know how many people? You know, we have been told so many things that are not quite, that don't add up, do they? So
yes,
and I think what you're saying, I mean, you come across as a very intelligent man, Nicholas, and it's really very good to hear these things coming out of your mouth, because you're balanced. You're not some wacky person that is a conspiracy theorist, as many people are. You're sensible, you articulate, you know what you're parish councillor, and you just said you're the chairman of the local parish council. So when you're saying these things, I think it really it should have an impact. Should isn't the right word, but it must impact people because it's not coming from a weird source. You've obviously done your research. And I then wanted to ask you, what did I say? I've asked you that one, right. So, what doctors don't tell you? Okay, that's a published publication, I believe. That's been going for a long time because I remember I used to pick things up, thinking, wow, it's quite shocking. You are now working with these guys, or you're putting an advert to get this information out. You're obviously finding whatever way you can to share this knowledge. And so, tell me, other than that, what else are you doing?
yes. Well, actually, in relation to what doctors don't tell you, I was unaware of it, but one of my co-directors in AIDS told me about publication, and he wants us to see whether we can fundraise for enough money to put in 6 advertisements into What Doctors Don't Tell You, because their audience or their readership includes people who are learning all the time about what we're doing. So he thought it's an ideal mechanism to get us more widely known. So we're fundraising for that magazine at the moment, and then we want to put adverts into it. Because the more people that we can reach, the better it is, and the more we can make a better, more compassionate society, and one where local councils do what they should be doing to the betterment of people rather than put up masks on false certificates and all that sort of thing, and not consider people with pacemakers. And as I say, that's one of the reasons why I became a local councillor, so that people are not damaged, that we do run a healthy democracy. And that's really what AICS is trying to do, to educate people as to the facts. And once people are aware, the whole society cleans up just through the awareness.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's my feeling.
So you say AICS is a limited company. So how many people are part of AICS? And are you looking for, more subscribers, more members? How are you trying to evolve?
Yes, actually, we tried to become a charity, but it was so difficult to get compliance. Then we tried to be, I think, a community interest company, and that was so difficult. So we eventually incorporated as a limited company, which is what we are now. I would say we've got about 650 followers, but we're in the process of raising funds. We're thinking of opening up tiers of membership so that people could become members, and maybe a gold member gets free access to certain videos and certain discounts on public events and that sort of thing. So we're working out now, we're revamping our website to make it more accessible to people, and we're looking at various mechanisms to raise funds so that we can become an effective equivalent of CHD in America, an organization well-funded and really achieving things for the betterment of our society. So that's what we're working on at the moment. And if people want to join in AICS, our website is an unusual one. It's AICS, www.aches.international, aches.international. If you just put aches.international into the browser, our website comes up, and you can send an email to say, I'd like to support, or I'd like to donate, or whatever you'd like to do.
Fantastic. Fantastic. What else did I want to ask? Is there anything else you would like to say? I think, because I always try and keep the sort of, 40, 50 minutes so that we don't lose lose our audience here. Is there anything else you would like to say, Nicholas?
I would say thank you for the work you're doing, Karen, because it's absolutely important that the sort of conversations that we're having now are broadcast to people, because the BBC won't do it, and nor will ITV, and even GB News, which says some truth, never has the sort of discussion that we have now, because Ofcom controls GB News. You know, Ofcom already told GB News off several times. So GB News doesn't do what you're doing, and I really take my hat off to you.
Well, I take mine off to you as well, and all the people that I talk to. To me, you know, the Wise Women Weekdays, it's really a means to have chats with people. I set it up as like loose women, or oh God, years ago there was something. It was like a coffee morning where the women sit and have a chat, and there were 13 of us at the beginning, but it seems to be me now. But I have moved from East Sussex to West Sussex, and it's a passion I have now to bring the truth to the masses, and I use that word expose again, and it's just having conversations. I mean, you know, you and I aren't being paid to do this, but it is a duty of care for humanity. If you've got some knowledge, I like to speak to people that have really gone down the rabbit holes, let's say, and they're expert in whatever it is their field, and they're sharing, you know, their newly found wisdom with people, because we need to know, because there is an ulterior motive going on behind a lot of what's happening. I also find it a very exciting time to be on this planet. How do you find it? Are you in fear? I don't think you are, but you can answer that yourself.
I'm extremely optimistic. I mean, I can't say that I know anything in that sense, Karen, but I feel that this is a remarkable, just as you do, a remarkable time to be alive, when truth is gradually flowering in pockets all around the world, and things can really change. I mean, I'm a great admirer of Donald Trump. I know in the UK he's been vilified, and they say he's a terrible man, and the BBC think he's terrible, and most people you speak to think he's a terrible man. But I think his long-term ambition is to take down the Federal Reserve Bank. And it's the Federal Reserve and central banking system which has been financing all these terrible wars that have plagued mankind for such a long time. And I genuinely believe that we are going eventually into a period when we don't have war, when we have a much more compassionate society, when people don't do bad things to each other, and that it's natural to be kind to people and not to do things which harm them. And I think we're on that verge. I think we're, in terms of human consciousness, we're at a pivotal point when we're moving from a very, very bad era into an era of much more justice, compassion, and truth. And so, like you, I'm extremely optimistic. And what I would say, dear Donald Trump, and I take your point about Robert Kennedy and the wireless wearables, but I wonder, I mean, I can't speak to Robert Kennedy, but I wonder whether he is going to do, first of all, exposure of the pharmaceutical companies, and after that, come on to electromagnetic radiation. But to do both at the same time might be too much cognitive dissonance for the everyday person. Not that they're stupid, on the contrary, the British population is very intelligent. It's just they've been fed a narrative which has sort of taken root in so many people. But it's through exposure that the narrative will be seen as false, and then people can come on to the next thing, which after he's exposed the pharmaceutical hoax, then it'll be the telecommunications hoax. And I do think, and Kennedy knows all this stuff because he used to run CHD, which was, you know, a pioneer in getting this information out to the public. So that's another reason I'm optimistic. So I think Trump putting Robert Kennedy in that position is a stroke of genius. And I think if he gets rid of the central bank, that will change the whole of the monetary system throughout the world. And I think wars will be stopped. And I think we'll end up with a much, much better society. I mean, I can't guarantee it, but I hope so.
I hope you're right. I mean, I won't go on about it on this chat. I have a difference of opinion with Mr. Trump about Mr. Trump. which I won't talk about here, only because of time. But I'm very happy to have that discussion, and another time. But yeah, if all that comes true, that's great. But I just, I'm just thinking of Project Warp Speed, and when Kennedy's come on board, they were going to invest a lot of money for another something in your arm to prevent cancer, and I don't know. I question it. But I think we should leave that. I think what he's putting out is intention. Yeah, let's see.
Yeah.
Nicholas, it's been absolutely fascinating chatting with you. I'm very happy to come and do another chat. If there's further information that you want to share. I think in particular what you're talking about, your grandfather and Hitler and stuff like that, because the history is only written, as we know, by the victors, and there's a lot of stuff that is coming out because of the internet and the fact that where the money was coming for both sides. And yeah, so we could always have a conversation about that. But thank you so much. Yeah, if there is anything else you want to say before we close.
I would say that what you and I do, and I always respect people having different opinions because I don't know certain things, but I would say that what you and I do is really based on love. Nobody wants to see people getting cancer, children being made infertile, and the suffering that goes on in our society is appalling. And that's why you do what you do, I think, and certainly it's why I do what I do. And I do think now is our time in terms of truth and kindness being to the fore as opposed to being suppressed.
Thank you, Nicholas. I think that's spot on. It comes from a place of love and truth, and you can't hide the truth. Ultimately, it'll come out. But sometimes people find the truth hurts, as it does, because they've been disillusioned, and a lot of people, we can't blame them at all because they've been indoctrinated or taught or led up the garden path, and that's why you and I are doing this work, so we can bring awareness. Or if they want to find out more, we're putting it out there. But again, a lot of people don't want to for whatever reason. And like you've also said, cognitive dissonance is quite huge, isn't it? But thank you so much for your time. It's been fascinating. I've learned a lot as well, and I wish you well. I'll put the details at the bottom so people can get in touch with you, and hopefully, I know you're looking for funding as well to get this word out in local magazines and wherever else. So I'll put all the details on the bottom of this video.
Thank you very much, Dan. Very nice to meet you and to talk to you.
Likewise, thank you. Cheerio now.
Bye-bye.